Welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, I know exactly who you are. You're naturally curious. You're constantly looking to expand your mind. And you want to get to the core of complex topics without wasting any time.
Right, absolutely.
And that is exactly what we're going to do right now. We are taking a mind-expanding journey into the heart of Central Asia.
Oh, it's a fascinating one today.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore the incredibly wild, volatile history of the world's largest inland body of water, the Caspian Sea.
Which is an absolute beast of a topic.
It really is. And as if the geological history wasn't enough to keep us busy, we are also going to untangle a baffling genetic mystery regarding the animals that somehow got trapped inside it.
Yeah, the biology is just as crazy as the geography.
We've got a fantastic stack of sources to guide us on this one.
We certainly have our work cut out for us. We're pulling from two incredibly detailed scientific papers today. The first is a comprehensive 2022 geological and archaeohistorical study. It was published in the journal Geomorphology, and it reconstructs the fluctuating levels of the Caspian Sea over the last 2,200 years.
Okay.
And then the second source is a 2006 phylogenetic DNA study from the Biological Journal of the Linnean Society. That one unravels the evolutionary enigma of the landlocked Caspian and Baikal seals.
It's such an amazing combination of sources. I mean, mud cores and sequenced DNA in the same deep dive.
It's the best kind of crossover.
Right. But before we get into the ancient mud and the genetics, let's establish some ground rules for you listening. Why should you, or anyone else really, care about a landlocked sea in Eurasia?
Well, because this isn't just dry history or isolated biology. The Caspian Sea is a highly dynamic enclosed world.
It's a closed loop.
Exactly. By looking closely at it, we get to see what happens when human warfare, ancient climate change, and evolutionary biology violently collide.
Violently is the right word.
It is a closed-loop system, just like you said. Understanding the mechanics of this isolated basin gives us a brilliant, if somewhat terrifying, blueprint for understanding sweeping environmental shifts on a global scale.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the sheer, unbelievable scale of change we see in the Caspian Sea.
Right.
Because when most of us think of the global ocean, we think of sea level rising in millimeters, a very slow, gradual creep.
The creeping change, yeah.
The Caspian Sea does not play by those rules at all. Unlike the open ocean, the Caspian is essentially a gargantuan lake largely fed by the Volga River.
Because it isn't connected to the world's oceans, its water levels have fluctuated wildly based on local climate and geography.
Wildly. According to our 2022 geological source, we are looking at an amplitude of change somewhere between 15 to 20 meters over the last 2,200 years.
Which is staggering. To put that into perspective, the researchers note a rate of change of up to 14 centimeters per year during certain historical periods.
14 centimeters a year.
That is an incredibly rapid shift for any body of water.
Yeah.
I mean, if we look at the dramatic sea level changes recorded in the Caspian just in our most recent century,
Right.
that ancient rate of 14 centimeters per year is actually 25% higher. We're talking about entire coastlines, entire ecosystems being fundamentally redrawn within a single human lifetime.
Which brings us to a specific period of extreme change. Our sources highlight a time in late antiquity during what is known as the Mid-Sasanian period.
Yes.
The water basically vanished from the coast. What exactly was happening there?
What's fascinating here is how drastically the environment shifted. The researchers identify a severe low stand during this mid-Sasanian period.
A low stand meaning the water just receded.
Dropped completely. The sea level dropped down to minus 32 meters, or perhaps even lower, below global mean sea level.
Wow.
You have to picture the bathymetry of the Caspian. The underwater slopes are incredibly shallow, especially in the southeast.
Like a dinner plate?
Exactly like a shallow plate. So a vertical drop of that magnitude meant that vast, sweeping expanses of land suddenly emerged from the water. Miles and miles of new territory just baking in the sun.
And humans, being humans, immediately looked at that new real estate and took advantage of it.
Of course they did.
The ancient Persian Empire, under the Sasanian dynasty, looked at this newly exposed dry land and saw a profound strategic opportunity.
They needed to protect their borders.
Right. They were constantly under threat from northern invaders, specifically the Hephthalites, who were also known as the White Huns. So to protect their valuable southern farmlands, the Persians built an unbelievable network of defensive structures right across this newly dried seabed.
Massive structures.
We're talking about the Great Gorgan Wall, which stretched over 170 kilometers long, They also built the Tamisha Wall and the Derbent Wall over in Dagestan. These were monumental engineering feats of the ancient world.
And the archaeological detail that really stands out is where these walls ended. The builders naturally extended the term at the very ends of these brick walls, all the way down to the coastline of that specific era.
To block off the beaches.
The goal was to prevent those invading armies from simply wading around the fortifications in the shallows. But because the Caspian Sea is so volatile, the environment refused to stay dry.
It always comes back.
Following this low stand, the region experienced a late Sasanian high stand. The water levels surged back up. And because the walls were built so far out onto the temporarily exposed seabed, those colossal ancient brick termini were swallowed up.
They are now completely submerged underwater.
Completely drowned.
I just love that visual. Giant, ancient Persian defensive walls slowly disappearing under the rising waves over the decades.
That's very poetic.
But it brings up a really important question for you listening. How do we actually know the exact timelines of when the water rose and fell? It's not like the Sasanians left a giant ruler sticking out of the mud with dates carved into it.
No, they definitely didn't. The secret lies entirely in the science of mud.
Mud.
The researchers in the 2022 study extracted deep sediment cores from specific locations, like the Gorgon Bay and the Hassan Goli Lagoon. By driving a hollow tube deep into the earth and slicing open these long columns of mud, they are literally looking back in time.
The deeper you go, the older the mud.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they analyzed this sediment for specific microscopic markers, primarily ancient pollen and things called dinocysts.
Dinocysts. That sounds like something you'd find trapped in amber in Jurassic Park. What are we actually looking at?
They are essentially the resting spores of single-celled marine organisms called dinoflagellates.
Okay.
Different species of dinoflagellates thrive in very specific environments. The researchers paid exceptionally close attention to one specific dinocyst called Lingulodinium macariforum.
Lingulodinium macariforum. Say that 3 times fast.
I will not. But the morphology of this organism, specifically the length of its little microscopic spine-like processes, changes based on the salinity of the water it lives in.
Oh, that's clever.
So finding this specific dinocyst in a layer of mud acts as an ancient biological salinity meter. It tells scientists exactly how salty the water was at that exact moment in time, which in turn tells them how connected that bay was to the main body of the Caspian Sea.
Okay, so the dinocysts act like a salinity meter for the mud. That makes sense. But finding salty mud is one thing. How do you actually attach a reliable calendar year to a random layer of mud?
That is the crucial hurdle, and is notoriously difficult in this specific region.
Why is that?
For decades, scientists struggled to accurately date Caspian Sea samples because the sea has its own highly unique isolated carbon cycle. If researchers simply dated a shell from the Caspian using standard radiocarbon methods, it might appear to be hundreds of years older than it actually is.
Because it's a closed basin.
Exactly the issue. Massive rivers like the Volga wash old recycled carbon from limestone and ancient soils deep into the basin. The marine life absorbs that old carbon, skewing the dates.
Making them look ancient.
Right. To fix this, the 2022 study applied a highly advanced calibration curve called IntCal20. They specifically utilized a freshwater reservoir offset that was calculated at 351 years, give or take 33 years.
Let me see if I have this right. They take the raw radiocarbon date from a shell in the mud, and they mathematically strip away that 351-year buffer of old river carbon.
Exactly.
And that reveals the true, accurate historical age of the sample.
That mathematical correction is the key. This new calibration allowed them to synchronize the geological mud core data with the historical written records with unprecedented precision.
And when they finally aligned those timelines, they discovered something stunning. The violent fluctuations of the Caspian Sea weren't just driven by natural climate shifts.
No, they weren't.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because sometimes the actual geography of the Earth is altered by the sheer force of human rage. It wasn't just temperature changes moving all that water around. It was war.
War and infrastructure.
Enter Genghis Khan.
The historical record backs that up completely. In the 13th century, between 1219 and 1221, Genghis Khan's army swept through the region of Khwarezm. In an act of total warfare and calculated revenge, his forces destroyed a vital, immense dam on the Amu Darya River. Destroyed it. And the destruction didn't stop there. History repeated itself a century later when the Timurid Mongols utilized the exact same scorched earth tactic destroying the rebuilt infrastructure in the 14th century.
You really have to visualize the geography to understand the impact of this. The Amu Darya is a rushing, powerful river. By destroying those dams, the Mongols literally diverted the entire flow of the river.
An unfathomable amount of water.
Instead of flowing where it naturally drained, this staggering volume of water was suddenly forced down an old, completely dry riverbed called the Uzboy Channel. And where did the dusky Uzboy Channel lead? Directly into the Caspian Sea.
The environmental consequences were catastrophic for the entire coastline. This sudden, human-induced influx of river water, billions of gallons pouring down a dry channel, caused the Caspian sea level to spike dramatically.
It's just wild to picture.
The geological and historical records show the water rising by 7 to 9 meters.
Talk about unintended consequences. Genghis Khan breaks a dam to punish a local ruler, and down the continent, a booming ancient trade port called Abiskun is literally swallowed by the sea around the years 1303 to 1304.
Wiped off the map.
An entire bustling harbor city full of merchants and families turned into a medieval Atlantis because of a military tactic executed hundreds of miles away.
It beautifully and tragically illustrates the profound vulnerability of civilizations living on the edge of such a delicate hydrological system.
Yeah.
The Caspian is a closed loop. Whatever vast amount of water is poured into it has absolutely nowhere else to go but up.
We've seen how this closed-loop system traps water and destroys cities in a matter of years. But the Caspian's isolation doesn't just trap water. Over millions of years, it traps life.
And this transitions us beautifully into our second source.
Which brings us to the second, almost unbelievable mystery we are exploring today. We've talked about the water, but now we have to talk about what lives in the water, specifically the seals.
The biological anomaly of the Caspian seal, known scientifically as Phoca caspica. And we also have to include its distant cousin, the Baikal seal, Phoca sibirica.
Right, because that one is also isolated.
That species is similarly trapped in Lake Baikal, the oldest and deepest freshwater lake on Earth, located deep in the heart of Siberia.
It is just so bizarre to picture for anyone familiar with geography. You have these inland, isolated bodies of water in the middle of the Eurasian landmass, thousands of miles from any ocean, and they have seals swimming around in them.
And not just any seals. These two species belong to the Phociinae, which are the northern true seals.
The ocean ones?
Morphologically and ecologically, they share undeniable, highly specific traits with the Arctic ringed seal, Phoca hispida, which lives exclusively in the freezing polar oceans.
What kind of traits are we talking about here? Why couldn't they just be a warm water species that adapted to the lake?
Well, first, we look at the genetics. They all have 32 chromosomes.
32.
To a geneticist, that number is a smoking gun. It's a highly specific genetic fingerprint that links them directly to the northern polar seals, rather than other seal families.
Interesting.
Furthermore, they all breed exclusively on ice, and their pups are all born with a very distinct white natal hair called lanugo.
And that white fur is essentially camouflage, right? It helps the babies hide on the snow and ice from predators.
Exactly.
Which makes complete evolutionary sense in the Arctic Circle, but it makes absolutely zero sense if you find them in the landlocked Caspian Sea or a freshwater lake in Siberia. So how on earth did Arctic seals get trapped in Central Asia? I know the historical debate on this has been pretty fierce over the decades.
The debate was deeply entrenched. For a long time, there were two main competing theories. The first was the Quaternary hypothesis.
Okay, the Quaternary hypothesis.
This theory argued that during the sweeping Middle Pleistocene glaciations, roughly 200,000 years ago, gigantic continental ice sheets physically pushed Arctic ringed seals south.
Like a slow-motion bulldozer.
The idea was that as the ice expanded, the seals were pushed ahead of it, eventually getting trapped in huge ice-dammed lakes and washing down ancient river systems into the Baikal and Caspian basins.
Surfing a glacier down from the North Pole 200,000 years ago? That sounds somewhat plausible given how much the Ice Age changed the landscape. What was the other camp arguing?
The other camp supported the tertiary hypothesis. This one looked much, much further back in deep time, about 15 million years ago, to the Miocene epoch.
Way further back.
Back then, an epicontinental body of water called the Caspian Sea covered much of the region. This theory proposed that the Caspian seal was simply an ancient direct descendant of the seals that lived in that ancient subtropical sea, surviving in the Caspian basin ever since it eventually got cut off from the main ocean.
So either they were pushed down by an ice sheet 200,000 years ago, or they are a 15-million-year-old leftover from a lost subtropical sea. Both sound like the premise of a great science fiction movie.
They really do.
But the 2006 DNA study came along and finally settled the score. How did they actually solve it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the DNA completely upended both of those established theories. The researchers conducted a rigorous phylogenetic analysis.
Meaning they looked at the genes?
They didn't just look at the overall DNA. They zeroed in on the engine of the cell's mitochondria. Specifically, they sequenced 3,369 base pairs across 3 targeted mitochondrial genes, known in the study as Site, B, COI, and COI.
Very precise.
And they mapped these across 9 different seal taxa.
So they basically built a highly detailed molecular family tree for all these seals.
That molecular microscope revealed something incredible. Think of those mitochondrial mutations as a highly accurate ticking clock.
Okay.
The data from those genes completely debunked the quaternary glacier theory, because the genetic divergence between the landlocked seals and the Arctic seals was far too deep to have only happened 200,000 years ago.
The mutations didn't line up.
The genetic differences proved they had been separated for much, much longer.
But wait, it also ruins the Perithous sea theory too. Because those shared traits we mentioned earlier, like the ice breeding and the white baby fur for camouflage, are highly specialized adaptations to the cold.
Right.
It makes no evolutionary sense for those specific traits to evolve in a warm subtropical sea 15 million years ago. If they were leftovers from a warm climate, they wouldn't have polar camouflage.
The biological logic there is undeniable, and the genetic data prove that they are undoubtedly Arctic in origin. By applying a molecular clock to the DNA sequence divergence, the researchers calculated that these landlocked seals radiated from a common northern marine ancestor roughly 2 to 3 million years ago.
2 to 3 million years ago, that is a very specific window.
Yes, during the late Pliocene epoch. This is a crucial timestamp because it perfectly coincides with the geological period when the northern hemisphere ice caps were significantly intensifying.
The world was freezing.
The climate was cooling dramatically, polar ice was expanding, and the ancestors of these seals were actively adapting to a freezing marine environment.
So what does this all mean? We have a concrete timeline. The DNA biological clock is ticking loud and clear, telling us the seals migrated from the freezing Arctic down into the Caspian and Baikal basins between 2 and 3 million years ago.
That's what the DNA says.
But if I pull up a geological map of the Earth from 2 to 3 million years ago, is there a massive river connecting the Arctic Ocean to the middle of the Asian continent?
This raises an important question, and it is the ultimate enigma of this entire study. The DNA definitively proves that the migration happened 2 to 3 million years ago.
Yeah.
However, the physical geological evidence of a waterway, a sprawling river system, or a marine connection linking the Arctic to those inland basins during that specific late Pliocene window is completely missing from the geological record.
It's a ghost river.
It is a literal ghost river. The Earth's crust is hiding the physical how. Scientists know with absolute certainty that the seals made the journey because their descendants are swimming in Lake Baikal and the Caspian Sea today, carrying the mutated mitochondrial DNA to prove it.
That is just wild.
But the actual geographical route they took, the water they swam through, is lost to deep time. It is likely buried under millions of years of tectonic shifts, mountain building, and sediment.
That is just incredible to think about. The biology proves a geography that we can't even see anymore. The DNA remembers a river that the Earth has forgotten.
It's profound, really.
When you step back and look at everything we've covered today, it really paints a breathtaking picture of how wildly interconnected our world is. By analyzing microscopic Dinosus spores in a tube of mud and sequencing the mitochondrial DNA of an ice seal, we've been able to reveal this staggering, turbulent history.
A history of extreme change.
We are talking about severe climate shifts that exposed enough land for the ancient Persian Empire to build 170-kilometer walls, and unintended Mongol terraforming that literally drowned medieval cities.
And for you, listening to this deep dive, it is vital to understand that this isn't just fascinating trivia. Understanding these natural and human-induced fluctuations in the Caspian Sea is highly relevant today. If a body of water this large could change its levels this violently in the past, understanding the mechanisms behind it, weighing the impact of climate variations against the sudden impact of human infrastructure, is absolutely crucial for the millions of people living on these coasts right now.
They're living on a knife's edge.
We are actively managing and living around ecosystems that we know possess the capacity for sudden, drastic transformation.
It really makes you pause and think about our own footprint on this planet, which leaves me with one final, slightly terrifying thought for you to ponder.
Let's hear it.
If a single act of medieval warfare, Genghis Khan's army breaking one dam on the Amu Darya River, could alter the hydrology of the world's largest lake enough to swallow entire trade ports and leave permanent geological markers in the mud.
Yeah.
What unintended millennial-scale geological anomalies are our modern, sprawling infrastructure projects laying down right now? When scientists a million years from now pull up a mud core to look at the bedrock of tomorrow, what kind of chaotic ghost rivers and drowned walls will they find from us?
A fascinating, if somewhat unsettling, perspective to end on.
Something to chew on. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.